Hey yo, it's Deep Convos with Meg and Fran. Welcome back to our podcast. It is episode 18. We are super, super excited to be talking with you today. My sister looks like she's laughing at me, but I will continue. Um, yeah, I'm just super stoked for this topic today. It's something that my sister and I have been reflecting on, and we thought it'd be really cool to talk about. It's just this idea of you are already a complete person. Like basically you're already badass, you're already awesome. You don't need to look externally or find like your soulmate or a husband or a partner or a boyfriend to fulfill you. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's our plan for today. But before we go into our topic, I thought I would just catch you up really quickly where we've been at, since I think the last episode we posted was an extra. So yeah, like my sister was in Utah. Oh my gosh, it seems like a long time ago now, but I think it was
No, it
just,
wasn't even a week ago that I was
yeah,
there.
but
It
it feels
feels
like
like a month.
forever. Yeah, she was in Utah and like it was fun and I miss her already. And um, yeah, how was that?
Aw.
Was it refreshing?
It was so you laughing already. It was so great, like just to be isolated. You guys can probably imagine New York is just like there's a lot of people, which I love living in a city. But I live in a small room, and just the fact that I had so much space and very few people to run into, and just like taking a walk outside is so different in Utah. It's like you can see far, like miles, like thousands of miles. Like your eye can literally see like all the way to the mountains. And
I
that
want to play the Who song right now when you said that. I can see for miles and miles. Okay,
I'll
continue.
try to put it in the intro
Yeah,
of
if you
this
could.
podcast. Yeah, it just does something to your psyche, and that like I felt like my imagination, like my creativity was stretched in a different way. And so like coming back, I came back on Monday this week, just like trying to find ways to replicate that sensation here. And I mean, it's a compromise, but yeah, it was good to have that little reprieve and a different mindset to just carry back with me here. I'm a Zenner. I'm like a Zenner. So
Yeah, that's good. I really think everyone needs a break. And I guess it's just a friendly reminder to our listeners that even though it is pandemic times, it's still possible to have. I mean, well, of course, my sister like flew across the country, but you can have a staycation. You can, in a safe way, like maybe go on a road trip with yourself, like check out a different town, maybe spend the weekend in an Airbnb, like find a really nice Airbnb
yeah.
and then just pamper
Or
yourself for
like
a
go to an
weekend.
orchard in a nearby town and go
Yeah,
like
because it's
apple
fall
picking,
time now. It's like time to
pumpkin
pick those.
picking, and like
Yeah, and pick those
squash.
apples and
You pick
um
squash? I don't know, but whatever.
pick some produce basically. It's a produce picking time,
Yeah.
guys. So yeah, you don't have to go far. You don't have to like travel internationally to still get that fix of like a different environment. So
Yeah.
yay, well I'm happy for you. Oh, and we
How
also
was
took a trip to Vegas. That was, I guess, kind of our little
Wait,
trip.
didn't
Like
we talk about I don't even remember. Did we
I
talk
don't
about it
remember
on the
either.
pod?
Did we?
Anyway, it
Oh no,
was
yes, we did, but I was like anticipating it. Now it's already
oh,
done. Like I was talking about
okay,
how
okay.
excited it was for it. So that was
Yeah.
fun. And like you met Mo for the first time. That was cool.
Yeah. That was interesting to put I mean, because I had only talked to him on not Zoom. What was it?
Just
Google
video.
video. I had just too many now. So yeah, it was interesting
Yeah.
to like meet the actual person, and then like to go on a road trip with them and stay with you guys for like 3 whole days.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It's like a little family.
It was like 112 degrees in Vegas.
Yeah, it was disgusting, but still
Mhm.
fun, still an experience. It just crossed my mind that like Mo is your brother.
In law.
Yeah, that's weird. Anyway,
What
so
the fuck,
that
dude? What a thought. Okay.
so that's what we were up to, and I guess we'll just jump
Right.
in. We're not high. We're not on any
Maybe
substances.
I thought about doing it, but ugh.
Yeah, it's too late now. We're already.
By the time it hits it, this is over.
It's like
So
it's like the end of it.
yeah. So let's just keep going.
Um. Okay. Well, I guess I will start.
No.
Whoa.
Let me start. Let me start
Oh,
it.
well, okay.
Okay. So as Meg,
Oh, story time.
it's not a story. So as Meg was saying at the top of the I can get through this. As Meg was saying at the top of the podcast, our topic for today is the idea of a soulmate, or like the idea of, your other half. I mean, we're gonna go into all the. You know what? That now is a good time to really go into like how that's permeated into our language, at least the American English language. So, Meg, why don't you? I think it's a good way to set up this theme. So, Meg, why don't you read some of these vocabulary things that we have here, examples?
Mhm. So, yeah, so we're defining like what it means to be the other half or like finding your other
No,
half.
we're going to, but let's just read some phrases that we use all the time without thinking about it in the
Okay,
American English
gotcha.
language. Yeah.
Yeah, so some things that we say all the time are like my sister said, like you're my other half. And then you can even think about like any weddings you've been to, like what people usually say in their vows. I think that's a good one.
Oh yeah, good one.
Um, or I guess love letters. If you've ever written a love letter, like what kinds of shit do you
No, I've
say? So
never
the other
written
one
a
is
love
like
letter.
finding the
Have you?
one. A
Yeah.
love letter. Well, yeah,
Aw. Okay.
probably.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just keep going.
So you're like, maybe you've said, I've found the one, or you're the one. Like I feel like you're it. Like I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Blah blah blah. You're my soulmate. It was love at first sight, which I feel like is more for the movies, but maybe you've experienced
Right.
that.
But I feel like when people say there are still people who believe love at first sight, and I think what they mean is like I found it's the same thing as the one. It's like I just knew this person was the one when I first laid eyes on them. It's like sort of like a compliment to the idea of the one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, Another couple ones are I can't live without you or I'll die without you. So you can think about the reverse of a relationship. Like if you've ever broken up with someone or you've been in a conflict with someone, if you've ever felt this way or said this phrase, like, oh my gosh, like I can't live without you. Like I don't know what I would do with myself if you weren't with me. That kind of thought is also kind of along the same line of this entire thing we're talking about.
To be fair though, that pain when you thought you were with the one and then you split up, I feel like it probably feels like you can't breathe without that. I mean,
Yeah. No,
I'm
no, no.
laughing,
The
but
feeling
that's
is
what it feels like.
Yeah, the feeling is
Yeah.
very much valid. All of
No,
these
yeah.
feelings are valid. But what we're exploring today is kind of just what is the reality? What is the rationale?
Right. We're going to
What is it really?
we're going to explore because these are the idea of like not being able to breathe or live without the one. It's like having that having you frame that feeling around that phrase is a symptom of this, is a symptom of having us having perpetuated this idea that we need to find our other half. That is a symptom of it. Like if we didn't
Yeah,
have
exactly.
this idea, we wouldn't be like framing our pain in the sense of like, oh, I can't live, I can't breathe, I can't eat without. There are literally songs about it. I can think of a couple of songs
Yeah,
about
exactly. And that's why I mentioned it.
live.
Like yeah, of course, if you break up with someone who you've been in a really intimate relationship with, yeah, you're supposed to feel that pain and suffering. But yeah, you're right. Like it's the way that we're phrasing it.
Yeah.
Like is it possible to break up and just say this hurts, like this sucks, I'm gonna miss this person, without saying I can't live without you, I can't
Right.
function without you, because then we're venturing into a territory that's a little bit different, that's a little bit codependent and
Yep.
more crippling than
Yep.
the pain. So
Okay,
yeah.
so now that I think that's a good entree into this topic. So why don't I read a couple of dictionaries definitions of what a soulmate actually is, and then go into like sort of like a little bit of a historical backdrop so that we can, dive off of or dive off. Jump, what do you call that? Diving board. Jump off
Dive
of.
off of it.
Oh yeah.
Dive
Okay.
into.
Anywho, okay, here's what the Cambridge English Dictionary defines it as. Someone, usually your romantic or sexual partner, who you have a special relationship with and who you know and love very much. Very like cold definition. Macmillan Dictionary. Someone who you have a special relationship with because you share the same feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. Again, it's not so those are dictionary, right? I feel like we attach a stronger connotation to them, but here's the origin of like finding someone who completes you. So it's just really brief. So Greek philosophy, it comes from Greek philosophy and the Bible. So Plato's Symposium, in that story, there's a comic poet named Aristophanes who explains that humans were once united and they came in pairs, but then they were split into like sad, unhappy halves by Zeus. And then ever since, we've all been roaming the world searching for our missing half, like missing piece. So that's one source. The other, I mean, we all know the story of Adam and Eve, like literally Eve came from Adam's rib, like they were part of the same body. So that's another source. And here are just a couple of things that I found in the popular media. So from popular culture, or from Psych Today about popular culture. For the past century, American popular culture has embraced and reinforced this romantic notion of the soulmate, especially in Hollywood movies. Matt Houston of Psych Today has described the story as such. A man spots a woman across a crowded room and knows that they're meant to be together. He wins her heart, but then he makes a big mistake, or fate pulls them apart, and he is sure he's lost her forever. Talking with his closest friends, he realizes that she's still the only one for him. So he tracks her down, and I hate this part of romantic comedies. He tracks her down and publicly declares his love in song, perhaps, and they end up in each other's arms with a story to tell their kids.
Yeah, this is that scene in the movie where like you're like, oh shit, I gotta make this right, and like he takes the taxi to the airport, and like she's already has her ticket for the airplane, and like
they're running to the gate, and it's like, no, stop the plane.
Yeah. Although I love those scenes, but it's like
really, oh God, I hate them.
Yeah.
Okay, and then here's what I found about polling. So there was this 2010 Gallup poll that found that 88% of people surveyed believed in the idea of soulmates, claiming that there was a one and only person whom they are fated to be with forever and who is waiting for them. So it's still very much believed. And here I found this interesting from this book, Modern Romance, by comedian Aziz Ansari and his co-writer Eric Klinenberg. They say, a century ago, people would find a decent person who lived in their neighborhood. Their families would meet, and after they decided neither party seemed like a murderer, the couple would get married and have a kid, and all by the time they were 22. They write, today, people spend years of their lives on a quest to find the perfect person, a soulmate. And I found it really interesting because like back then, people put less importance on that. Like literally, if they found someone decent who was into them, like they had the same goals, even though they weren't like super in love with them, you know what I mean? They were like, oh yeah, let's just get married. Like, I mean, you're probably as best as I'm gonna get, you know what I mean? Like there was that idea because like the world was a lot smaller then, and now it's like we have so much access to everyone, and it's like no, I can't settle into this with this person. Ugh, like there must be something better. Like the grass is greener somewhere. I feel like that's such a like a thing that a lot of people think now.
Yeah, this is really interesting because a lot of different factors feed into this. Like number one is just the generation that we're in. I feel like millennials, because we're millennials, right? Like just the way, not just relationships, but the way we approach life and our perspective is a little different than people who came before us. You know, like even the same attitude with our jobs. Like we tend to be like more like, oh, I want to do something I love. Whereas like the generation before us are like, this is just my job. It's not my life. Like, you know, but we're more idealistic. So I feel like we apply that same mentality to our relationships. Number two, oh my gosh, like, sorry, like a million thoughts struck my mind because there's a lot of factors. What were you just saying? What was that point you were just saying? What was the last thing you just said?
Well, that we are less inclined to settle. Like we don't want to
Ah,
settle.
yes. Okay. So because you said like, oh, there's technology. We're now in an
Oh
age
yeah.
where technology is just, of course, and there's like the new documentary on Netflix. My mind is like a million miles per hour, and that's because like in the past when there were no
Are
cell
you like
phones or
on
Facebook.
speed? Like what's
No, I'm not. I just there's a lot of thoughts I want to talk about.
okay,
So
fine.
in the past where there's no like dating apps or like Facebook or whatever, you're like, all right, well, I got these four dudes in my neighborhood. This
Exactly.
dude looks good. Okay, whatever. Now it's like, oh my gosh, I have access to the entire world through my fingertips. And it's like this FOMO mentality,
Yeah,
which is
fear of missing. Yeah,
part of
definitely.
our generation. Like, oh my gosh, but if I like sell for this one guy, what about those like
Yeah,
20 others that like hit me up on the app? And then you're always wondering,
right,
like, what if, what if? The
right.
other thing that struck me and that I wrote down in our notes is just the monogamous culture that we have, which I know like there are some parts of the world where polygamy is probably a thing. I haven't done a lot of research into this. And, you know,
Mhm.
and some people do practice polygamy. But I feel like just our monogamous mindset and the way we were raised, maybe religion factors into this too. If you were raised in a household where you're like, okay, like this is just one person, you know, and you can't like date other people, then you're more likely, I think, to think this way of like, okay, like there's just going to be one person ever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas if I'm a polygamous person, I'm not going to think this way because, you
Yeah, and
know,
not just polygamous. Like, uh, if you are with someone, you're not like you really, really love. If you didn't, maybe if you don't have that sort of like you grew up religious or like you marriage isn't like huge to you. There are some people like marriage isn't a big deal. They're like, oh, I'm living with my life partner, and like if we fall out of love, we'll just separate amicably. Like there are some people like that. Like, but for the most part, yeah, I think marriage has such a hold on society. Um,
yeah, because it
eh,
is a big investment, you know, and divorce is
yeah,
really messy. And so that I think helps feed into the whole, okay, I must find the one,
right,
make sure they check all the boxes because if they are the one, then we're going to get married and marriage is a big investment and kids are a big investment and like
right. There's something about the
everything.
idea that it's like, oh, this person is whom I love right now, and there can't be anyone like what's so wrong about being like, oh, this is the person I really love right now, and maybe in like 10 years we won't be in love anymore and then we'll move on. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with that idea, but for some reason it like hits people the wrong way. It's like, like that's wrong. Like you got to stay with one person until you're at 95, which is great for some people, but for the most part people can't do that. um and I
Yeah.
think you're right. I don't think we're meant to be monog. Oh, this is like, oh, it's a
Yeah. It's like
hot
another combo.
hot opinion, but I don't think
Yeah.
people are meant to be monogam. Like at least like with one person forever. Um, wait, did you have anything else to add to that? Because I had an addendum to your previous point.
No, that's it. Those are all the thoughts that I had.
Okay, to your previous point about the like the apps and like like, oh, the grass is always greener because like I can't settle with this one guy that I'm talking to. The other thing it does, that mindset does, is like if you do end up going out with a guy and then there are like a couple flaws, but for the most part you work out, you're like, oh shit, like what if this next guy has one less flaw? Like you're less inclined to like work through something. Like with the people in the past who like only had four options in their neighborhood, they're like, okay, I got to work on these things. Like I got to learn how to live with this. I got to learn how to compromise with this. But now it's like, oh shit, like I don't know if I want to compromise on this, even though maybe like there are some things you're like, it's a deal breaker, it's wrong. But then there are some things that you're like, I got to work on this with this person, and it's a journey. But some people are like, ugh, like do I have to go on this journey? Like I can just go on the next person. Like try to look for the next person.
Right.
You know?
It's like a way of instant gratification almost.
Yeah. It's like it's all over the place. It's not just in relationships. It's like we're just
Mm-hmm.
like, and any, for example, like learning the guitar. I don't know, just a random thing. It's like, I'm guilty of this. Like, that I went through like 10 instruments when I was younger, like the fucking cello, the drums, the piano before I settled into acting. But it's like, oh, I'm not good at this song after 5 days. Ugh. It's
Yeah.
not for me. It's the same thing with a
Yeah.
relationship. It's like, you can't do that. These are people. Everyone's unique,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It's a
Whew.
good point. Yeah, it's a
Um,
lot. It's like very complicated and related to a lot of things.
yeah. Wait, was that do you have anything else? Because I
No, that's really it.
because so these, so we made up a list of like references in the popular culture in the media and like Disney movies. Um and there are a couple, I put a couple in here that like directly address these issues. Like I found them really good at like, oh wow, like there's something wrong with how we date. But anyway,
Mhm.
do you have anything on this list? What
Well,
did you?
yeah, you wrote down Disney movies, and I just want to say first thing is when we're kids, we love watching these, and it's oftentimes like the very first thing that kids consume. And it's like the storyline and the plot for just a lot of stuff. And like even like the
Yeah.
most basic cartoons, it's like a love story because it's easy to tell. And it's like one person trying to find another. We perpetuate that kind of story from like
Mhm.
day one, like when you're
We
still
start
like
young. We
a
start them
toddler.
young.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like when we're kids, it's normal, but then when you're an adult, you start to realize them. So like I think a Disney movie that's really good example of this is The Little Mermaid because she
Uh,
literally gives away her voice to get legs to be with a guy. Like
right, because this guy was the one for her, even though there were so many obstacles to it. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. But
Yeah.
still did it. She like made that sacrifice and then, like if you're a kid, what does that teach you? Like this is really important. I need to like
Right.
literally like this everything is hinging on this,
Yeah.
even if it's high stakes or whatever. Like this is it. Like this is really really important, you
Dude,
know?
I find the Little Mermaid like so um profound because like her voice was her identity. Like that
Yeah.
was her, like it was so much a part of her and her power. She literally gave her own soul, like her own identity, her own power away for this guy who was meant to be her soulmate. Like she
Mhm.
had to be with this guy because
Mhm.
fate decided it. Like,
Mhm.
oh, that,
Yeah.
and the
But
fact that
that's
we
the other thing.
see,
And that's why this movie can be a great metaphor for just their entire podcast is that was her choice. She chose to do that. Like she made that choice to give her voice away to like pursue this guy. And if you think about it in a broader aspect, like we often, and again, we'll talk more about this later because it's a mindset. We make this choice to look at relationships this way, you know? Yeah, like again, it's like it's complicated because society feeds into it when we're little kids. We watch these things that feed into it. So, but at the end of the day, I think that's the comforting part is yeah, we all kind of think this way sometimes and like, oh, I need this other person to complete me. But I'm choosing that. And if I'm choosing that, I can choose to think
yeah,
another way, you know?
right. Once you see that, once you look at it like that, you can be like, what's the opposite way of thinking about this?
Mhm.
Like, like for in her situation, for instance, it's like, is there a way for me not to give up my own power and still marry someone I love? Like, is there a way to do that?
Mhm.
Instead of like, oh, I chose to give this up because it's like kind of the only choice to be happy. But it's
Mhm.
like, what if what would be the opposite choice, and can I still be happy and still
Mhm.
marry the guy I love? You know what I mean?
Right.
Um
Yeah.
Anywho, Little Mermaid, yes. And then I put here that I thought Frozen Disney? I think
I
it
think so.
is. Well, I thought Frozen was like really interesting because it kind of challenged that precedent in that I'm not a Disney fiend, so I don't know people's names, but I know that the younger sister's Anna, right? Like
I
the
think
one
so.
that's like, "Do
I'm
you
not
want to be a snowman?" That girl.
I
And
think
then
so.
her sister Elsa is the ice queen.
Mhm.
And neither of them get with a dude. Like neither of them get with a dude. Like they're the main story in that movie was that sisterhood and like
Mhm.
them finding their own power, like and being happy. Like the Elsa, like, oh my god, listeners who like are Frozen fans, like sorry if I'm butchering the plot, but it also like, you know, like found happiness like in her power, like they both have powers, and they didn't need a guy to like find that and like be comfortable with that in the end.
Mhm.
So I thought that was a really interesting like change from like, the usual Disney pattern.
Mhm.
Um Okay, I mean, I guess Jerry Maguire, like we come on, you complete me. Like, you complete me. Like, wait, have you seen Jerry Maguire?
Um, is that
Tom
no?
Cruise and Renee Zellweger. That's where the quote "you complete me" came from.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't seen that.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Okay, we gotta
Old
watch
movie,
it at
right?
some point. It is old, but that. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly set up the scene for you. So Tom Cruise comes back. I think this was after like he did something bad to Renee Zellweger's character. I didn't like Tom Cruise's character at all, to be honest. But anyway, he comes back and like Renee is in the middle of this book club with like her sister and all their friends. Um, and he comes in and he's like, "May I speak to to Renee?" I forget their names in the movie. And then everyone's like, "Ooh, it's like your husband." They're married by this point, but they split up. They're like, "Oh, your husband, like that you're meant to be with. You gotta listen." And she's like, "Ugh, what?" Like, she's acting like, "No, what do you want from me?" But like, you can tell like the character's like, "I love him." And he's like, he goes into this long speech because like the guy who comes back always gets this long speech and no one
Mhm.
butts in and questions like, "Oh, can I question that point in your speech? Like, what about that time you did that?" No one, because they're like, "Oh, this is the guy you're meant to be with. Let's listen to his entire speech and not question anything."
Mhm.
And at the end, he's like, "You complete me." And then she's like, "Ah, you had me at hello." And it's like, I know I just dissed that movie, even though I like that movie, but the problematic part in that is that he's basically saying to her, "You can't leave me. We are meant to, or if you fit like this, we make up two parts of a whole. If
Mhm.
we split up, we're gonna both be miserable. You
Yeah.
complete me." You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's like that way of thinking is detrimental not only to you if you think that way, in that you're kind of devaluing your already completeness, but you're also putting the other person that you're with in a really bad spot. Like you're putting all this like unfair
Yes.
expectation on them to like yeah, like I'm thinking of me and Mo. Like if I treated our relationship that way and I expected him to meet all my needs and be all these things, even if I didn't tell him directly, I'm implying that if I were to think that
Yeah.
way or to put those kinds of expectations in our relationship, it's just unfair to him because that's not what he
It
signed up for.
is. You're kind of putting that other party like almost in a villain position in the sense that if they're like, if you said like, "Don't leave me, you complete me," and then what if you were like, "No, because I can't be with you right now because I need to put myself first." If you put them in a position of like, "Oh shit, if I say that, I'm literally splitting this guy in half." You know what I mean? Like you're putting them in a position to be like, if I don't say yes, then I'm a bad guy. It's like a very kind of almost a little bit manipulative. Like if someone said that to me and I was like, I actually am not ready, like because I have stuff to work on my own, I would feel so bad because I'm like, this guy literally said to me that I complete him. Ew, someone said to me that I complete him. But yeah, you know what I mean? I don't know.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Maybe I've told this story about Jay. Like if you're a
I
listener,
was actually thinking about Jay.
yeah, like Jay, to put it in a nutshell, like wanted to get back together with me. And I was like, no, because like he's just a
Yeah.
lot of bad things. And he was like, oh, okay, I literally have a gun to my head. And I'm gonna kill myself if you don't get back with me. So I've literally like experienced the extreme of that. And even though
Right.
I had like put my foot down, I still felt bad because it's like I felt like it was my fault that he was going through this, even though it's not. It's like completely not my fault at all.
Yeah,
And long story
exactly.
short, he didn't really do it. He was just threatening, but he pretended like he killed himself because he was like didn't text me for 3 days. And can you imagine what a horrible spot that put me in?
Yeah.
Like
Right. I think yours is obviously is an
that's an
extreme,
extreme,
but
but
that's if you think about that you complete me thing or like you're my half, you're my other half, which is like that's one form of it, what you just talked about. But if you think about that phrase, it's you're putting the response like you're saying, if you don't complete me, I'm going to go into this like mental and emotional turmoil and it's all going to be your fault. A, it's not going to be their fault, but B, mainly B is that you're going to survive it. You're basically saying I'm not going to survive this emotional turmoil if you don't be with me, but you are. Like, you know what? You're like we're all responsible for our own shit, you know what I mean? That's the other problem with that idea. It's like you're putting all your shit on the other person as well. and not taking responsibility for your own emotional shit.
Yeah, and that's really the main thing I want to explore more later, and what I was alluding to when I was talking about breakups, because I've also experienced that of like with my ex, like we had like a little mini breakup because I had like done something horrible because I was like in active alcoholism, and it literally was one of the most painful moments of my life, and I truly felt the whole like I cannot live without him. I like everything I look at reminds me of him, like that. Like it was really horrible pain. Like I was crying for days. And now, like as an older person, like looking back on that, like I'm glad I went through it, but also just my it's really amazing how my perspective has shifted regarding breakups and just like for instance, and this is just gonna sound really weird, but it's just a place of acceptance and I guess maturity that I've come to is like I'm in a very happy relationship with my husband. Like I love him. Like I would do anything for him, like et cetera, et cetera. Like we're fucking married. But at the same time, I have the comfort that if God forbid something ever happened to our relationship, don't know what, like if we ever broke up or whatever, I know 100% confidence I will be fine. Like in
Yeah.
that knowledge, even though it hasn't happened like that, and I don't want it to happen, of course, because I love Mo. But if that were ever to happen, I know 100% confidence I will be fine. I will be okay. I will emerge stronger. I didn't have this knowledge when I was younger, when I went through that mini breakup with my ex. I didn't have that, and it was so painful. But
Right.
now, like that, looking at my relationship that way and having that peace and knowing that I am like, yeah, I love my husband, like they're mutual, they're not mutually exclusive. I can love my husband, but also have that confidence in myself, even in like
Yeah.
thinking in that worst case scenario that I will still be fine, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Which I think is like the that's the hard thing about having like our society having grown up on this. Because it's hard to get to that, like you literally had to work so hard to get to that spot, that mindset, because like everything in the, like we're literally talking about popular media starting from when we're young, is everything is saying it's the opposite. Everything is saying you can't control that part. Like you're not going to be fine if you don't find someone to, find that other half. And like if they break up with you, you're not going to be fine. Like everything else is set up against that. So like, I mean, we don't have any solutions here on this podcast. It needs to be legislated. But that's the thing. It's like we have to start working like actively, like you did, Meg. Like just like a lot of like self work on like the opposite. Like what are the things that complete, I mean, what about myself is completing me? Like, um and that's such a healthy place to be at. Like I am going to be honest, I don't have like when we get to the personal stuff, like the section, I know that it's still in me to be like, oh, I need to find someone. Like I'm fucking getting old, and if I don't find someone, like I'm going to be miserable my entire life. Like no. So I'm not even there yet. But
yeah, the
listen,
societal expectations are exacerbating it. And this is
yeah.
like reminding me of a podcast that we filmed where we talked about comparison, the pits of
Oh,
comparison,
for sure. Yeah.
because that just exacerbates everything that you're going through. And
Yeah.
I felt that way too about like, even though like we're not old, this is just like us telling this to ourselves, like we're fine, but this is like how I feel about like having kids and all of that. Like the comparison exacerbates
Yeah.
everything.
Right. Because not
Yeah.
only are you comparing yourself with other people, um, in maybe a different stage, like of their life, or like they're doing something different, you're also comparing yourself to other people who probably subscribe to this idea. They're probably like, oh yeah, like when are you gonna get, like when are you guys gonna get a kid, or like when are you gonna get married? Like we get that question all the time from people who do subscribe to it. So it's like even harder than just plain comparison. It's like everyone else believes this, and so you're like kind of constantly bombarded with it. So not blaming other people, I'm just saying it's just like the system. It's kind of like our government. I'm like relating everything to Trump. It's kind of like our government and like our law enforcement and criminal justice system. It's set up, it's not broken, it's set up with this like mistaken idea, and it's up to us to like kind of disrupt it in our own self. um and just help our loved ones with it. Like just stop, for example, like I could stop asking people like, oh, when are you guys gonna get married? Like stop doing shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, do you have anything to add before I continue this list?
No, I think that's good. I just wanted to bring up the point, like, again, just another factor that is feeding into it is society, the society
Yeah,
that we live in.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I contribute to it. So, and then I put here reality shows like The Bachelor and Love is Blind, which I love. Love is Blind, but it definitely, I mean, it kind of plays on that idea. It's like your match, like your one true love is going to be behind one of those doors. And the fact that a couple of people have gotten married, probably some people are like, oh, like Love is Blind. Like you can find your one person. See? They proved it in this Netflix show. So I bet like for a lot of people it's been reinforced with that show, which like, you know, we're I don't buy it. I mean, I love the show, but I don't buy it. Okay, you're not gonna comment. Nothing. Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. Okay,
No,
so
it's good. I agree.
wait, do you want to talk about? No, you know what? I'm gonna talk about the two that I put here that challenge the idea of like a soulmate, a romantic
Mhm.
soulmate. Is we watched Plus One. Remember that movie where like those
Yeah.
best friends, like I mean, they ended up together, but basically the premise. So it's Maya Erskine from Pen 15, and then Jack Quaid. We all know Jack Quaid. What's his dad's name? Oh my God,
Dennis.
Dennis Quaid's and my grandson. But basically there was the scene in that movie. So these two two grown-ass folks
You like really
are
aged yourself when you said
shut up. Guess how old I am, people. So these two folks are best friends. They both recently been through a breakup. I mean, it doesn't fully disrupt the genre in that they do end up together. It is a rom-com after all. But there is a scene where so Jack Quaid's character is constantly going through these women and always find not lasting very long because he's like, but there's something wrong with them, you know, like I'm not gonna settle. Like I'm seeing all my friends get married and they look so happy and perfect. I want that perfection in my relationships. And there's this scene where Maya Erskine, this is when they were dating, and he's starting to do this to her now. He's starting to be like, ugh, like we're having arguments. Like, I don't know if I like this relationship. And she confronts him and she goes, I love you, doofus. Like the fights happen. Like this is why you keep struggling, because you keep putting that perfection on everything. You keep searching for the one, and I'm the one right now. Like she basically says, I'm the one right now. Like I'm the one who loves you right now. And just you need to take me for who I am and not put this like the one perfection on top of our current relationship with all its flaws and all its, you know, you need to work on it with me, as opposed to being like, oh God, like this is not looking like the our married friends relationship. So no. So I loved that scene because it's like it actually addresses it. It's like you can't be putting that on your dating life because you're never going to find any meaningful relationship if you're just like it has to reach this level. And you just need to live in the moment with this person and go through this journey with this person. So I loved, everyone watch that movie. It's so good. If you
Yeah,
have
I really like that too.
additions to that. No? Okay. I mean, everyone knows my best friend's wedding because I mean, it's still a rom-com, of course, but Julia Roberts' character thought that her best friend was the one, and he wasn't. He found his one, quote unquote, his one with Cameron Diaz, and she had to be happy with it. She had to accept it, and I just love that it didn't. At the end, she didn't find like the one. You know, like she had to like go through that journey of like acceptance in a funny way. So those two movies, everyone watch them.
Mm.
And then you can talk about Romeo and Juliet.
Um, yeah, I just like put that down as an example of, sorry, we're now going back into things that don't challenge it.
Oh, that's
An
fine.
example of really extreme codependency. And yeah, like they literally killed themselves because I mean, like everyone knows the story, but in the end, like they both die because they're just like so intertwined. And like, if you're gonna go under tragedy, I'm gonna go under tragedy, and it's just like a very codependent way to look at it. It's just like very unhealthy, but it's also like it's romanticized a lot, like this way of thinking of like we go down together and like this super attachment. That's very romanticized, and we see that a lot, not just in Romeo and Juliet, but again, Romeo and Juliet's just an extreme example where they both die, but
right. But Romeo and Juliet provided the template for a lot of other like you could even argue that's like the template for a lot of future like movies, romantic movies.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that story. Like everyone's like, oh, Romeo and Juliet, like, oh, can you imagine a love that strong? You know what I mean?
It's like, yeah, we should not be promoting a love that strong.
Praising that. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. Anything else come to mind media wise or popular culture wise before we take a break?
No, I think that's good. I think even though those are just a few examples, like I'm sure us listing them will prompt like in listeners' minds, like others that are along the same vein, because these are all like tropes, like what's the word? It's tropes the right word? Yeah, like recurring themes that regardless whatever movie, like it's just something that's just so permeated and so normal in our society. And like I said, the really concerning thing for me is that this is what our kids are seeing from a very young age. And so you get like little girls that are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get married and have a kid. And she's like 5. And it's really concerning.
Right. It makes me think that when I raise my kids, if I ever have any, which I don't plan to, but if I do, like I would totally curate what we watch to like, you know, what we just talked about, like Frozen, and as opposed to like fucking Little Mermaid.
Right.
Or like if we do watch Little Mermaid, talk to them about it and not be like, well, that's that story. Let's keep going. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we get back, we're gonna talk about how we're gonna continue the conversation of how this idea has permeated our personal lives and what we think are the downsides to this idea and how we could, you know, personally improve on them. And then what other thought leaders say about this topic. Okay, we are gonna come right back, folks.
Hello, welcome back to our podcast. Trying to change it up from Hey Yo. I'm trying to be like a normal person. It's hard. It's hard for me.
No, me too.
Yeah, welcome back. So we just finished talking about kind of like the dictionary definition of, you know, finding your other half, finding the one, that train of thought, like the things that we say personally, and then like examples of that in the media. And really, like, I think our point was just how pervasive it is in our way of thinking, and just the things that we consume, the things that our kids consume. And even though we may recognize some of those trains of thoughts as being, what's the word? Like toxic or destructive, even though we may recognize it, it's hard to break out of it just because it is such an ingrained thing. So yeah, we're going to explore that a bit further, but in context of just how we've personally experienced it. And then maybe that will shed some insight into our journey and how we are trying to grow from this mindset, because I think we've established it's not healthy either for yourself or for the person that you're placing those invisible expectations on. Right. Do you want to start?
Or? Well, I think my experience with, like, as I said earlier, I definitely buy into it. Like, despite how my brain's like, my brain knows logically it doesn't make sense, but as we were saying, like I was raised with this idea, and it's hard to break out of it. And I think my experience with it is kind of the opposite of Meg's, like probably the other other end of the spectrum of where this idea can be dangerous, in that I've never had like a steady boyfriend. Like I've always just like casually dated someone for like a few months and then was like, oh, time to move on to the next one. And it's because, if I'm really going to admit it, like my pat answer when people are like, oh, why not? My pat answer was like, oh yeah, because like, you know, I can't commit. Like I'm like commitment phobe, and like, you know, I'm like just down to clown. That's down to clown, baby. But that's not true. Like if you really like dig deep into it, like what it was is that I didn't think I was good enough for anyone. And so it's the other end of the spectrum of this dangerous like toxic idea, which is that you are like I am good enough. Like my brain knows that I am complete, and that if I really accepted that and like worked on that, like worked on accepting it, I would be able to like if once I meet someone I really like, it's like I'm cool with myself, and it would be cool if like I could find someone cool with themselves too, and like we could go on this life journey together. But the fact that I'm just like, oh God, like I'm not good enough, and I can't complete this person properly because I'm like not good enough. So I guess I'm just gonna like date them for a few months and then leave them. Is like no one ever think people probably don't think about that other side of this idea, but it's very much part of the same coin. It's like both are two sides of the same coin. Like you could either be like, well, when you talk about your experience, they'll see the other side of the coin. But my side of the coin is like, I don't believe that I'm complete. I mean, I'm better now. Like again, it's a journey with myself. Like I've been working on it for a while, but that's why. It's because I'm like, I don't believe I'm complete. And so therefore I can't complete this person. Like, you know what I mean? It's always in the framing is always in relation to another person, as opposed to like, it's all in here. You're all good. You have it all in here for yourself. So that's where my that's where my journey is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the undercurrent of just or what our intended undercurrent of all our episodes of what I'm hoping is our entire podcast is self-love and self-worth, which is like,
Yeah.
oh, you're probably like, oh yeah, like we know we hear this all the time from like all the self-help books, whatever. But if you think about it, it truly is the solution to like all the world's problems.
For real.
Because like what you just described, it's like, okay, like what is the solution? Like more self-love, like you said, more confidence that you are already complete. Like all this like stuff that you're putting upon yourself is self-imposed, you know?
Right.
And then like for me, like what Fran said is like I've been in relationships basically like my entire 20s, which is it's awesome, but it's kind of like um
No, you're
but
not alone. Like a lot of people.
it's kind of crazy. But what I've learned and like it's really been a journey, as Fran said, it's like just my way of thinking about relationships and stuff. And also with relationships, like my relationship to myself and like self-love and self-worth has really drastically changed from when I was 21 to like now I'm like 28. Um, Whoa, I just had a brain fart. But yeah, like what I've learned is that in relationships, the two people should be whole. They're each person is already 100%. The whole point of a relationship is for the two people to be supporting each other and helping each other grow. Not, oh, I
Yeah.
need this person to help me and then like he needs me for something. Like we're not here to like fill each other's cups,
Right.
you know, which is how I, and I'm sure a lot of people think about relationships when they're first starting out, like in their teens or early 20s. It's just a very common way to think about relationships. Like, oh, like you are here to check X, Y, and Z off my list. Like that's why you're there. And if you don't, and you know, we get really attached and we break up, oh my gosh, you're like the world's gonna end. That's how most people think of relationships. And I have definitely like, and that's the thing. Like when my sister was talking about like, oh, you've like grown a lot through this growth is not something I did outside of myself or that like I was talking to my partners about or whatever. This growth all happened inside of me. Through
Yeah.
self-love and through self-work was I able to then fix all the other outside spokes of my wheel, if you want to think about it that way. And on that wheel is everything, relationship, work, whatever. Through
Mhm.
self-love, then I was able to address all the other stuff outside, including relationships, which then led to like my growing awareness and maturity of like, I'm already complete. I'm already 100%. Regardless what happens in my relationship and relationship, job, whatever, I am going to be okay through it all. Lose my job, I'm going to be okay. Lose my home, I'm going to be okay. Lose my marriage, going to be okay. When I say going to be okay, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to have feelings. I'm
Yeah.
still going to cry. I'm still going to be devastated. I'm allowed to have those feelings as a human. But I know what I'm trying to say here is like, I have internalized the truth that I will be okay, and my identity and all these other things about me do not hinge on this other person, which is the problem that I see in a lot of relationships, and why a lot of relationships fail is you're literally looking at the other person as your other half, when that's not it. Like, if you are 100% other person 100%, when you choose to come together in a partnership, you decide to support each other. That's it. End of story. And then, in the actual relationship, all these other little things that I've learned. And I'm glad, like, when I say hang out with his friends, I mean like talk to his friends on the phone, because they're all like overseas. I'm glad when he has like hour-long conversations with his friends, or like when we were living in other countries and he would go spend the day with his friends and whatnot, because he's having his like bro time with like his buds, and like I want him to have that. Or like, I even tell Mo sometimes, like, look, if you want to take a trip to Cali, like a solo trip just to explore, go for it. Like, I want him to like have his individual time to like do the stuff that he wants to do. And then, he would support me in that as well. Like, if I wanted to have a girls' night, or like, and that's like the kind of relationship you should strive for. You're not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we each have our own lives. We are each 100% already, but we're also together, and then we're supporting each other, and we're, that's how it should be. Not like, I'm gonna die if I'm not with
I think so. You're actually bringing up, which we're going to address later, but how we can change the definition of what the one means, which we're gonna talk about. But you're sort of broaching that topic of like,
sorry about that.
No, that's actually good. Like, it's like a little teaser.
Because like in my early 20s, I didn't think this way. Like, I talked about the mini breakup I had with my ex. Like, I was very much in that mentality, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm not functional. I can't do anything about it. I can't do my schoolwork. I can't go out to see the light of day. Like, I can't. I'm paralyzed. I cannot. I'm dead. Even though I wasn't. Like, it was just a self-imposed thing, because I had hinged so much on this one relationship.
Yeah, if you think about it, that was what I was subconsciously trying to avoid, because I'm like, if I don't commit to this person, then when they eventually leave me, I'm not gonna feel like, oh, I'm gonna die, because like we didn't fit, because I was a crap. It's like, again, it's two sides of the same coin. It's because we're hinging our happiness on someone else. So yeah, it's like sort of, it's the same coin. And I guess we started, before we talk about like how we can actually like change the definition of a soulmate for ourselves, we kind of already talked about this, but like the problem with like the current framing it around someone else, or like someone completing you. Well, here are my ideas of why it's problematic. Because here's what all that this implies to me. It implies that there's only one person who is a perfect fit for you. That's twofold problem in that there's only one person in the entire world forever that you can be happy with, and also that there's a perfect fit. Like, it implies that there's someone who can perfectly mesh with you, which I don't believe that's true. Like, you're always going to have to be working on something with someone. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know, that's weird. Who doesn't have anything to work on? And also it implies, that's the same thing that I said. It implies that it's a soulmate. You talked about this a little bit in our notes, but it implies that a soulmate is only a romantic like partnership. Like, only a romantic relationship can be called a soulmate relationship. But you can have soulmates. You can have firstly, you can have multiple soulmates, and they can be friends. Like, someone can just really get you, and they're not a romantic partner, and I also think it implies that if you don't find this one romantic partner, you're just going to walk around sad with this like romantic partner shaped hole in your your heart, and you're always going to be sad, and you can't ever have a meaningful relationship with anyone else if you don't find this one relationship. Other relationships don't matter, which is like, is it false? Like, you're literally taking the color out of your other relationships because you have this idea that only this one matters.
Mhm.
And that could hurt your other relationships. That could hurt your other friendships, your other relationships with your loved ones, because you're like, oh, but this one person, oh, you know, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you agree with all of these, but I
Yeah,
don't
no, I do agree with all of them. And again, I'm going to tie it all back to self-love. Deficit
know. Go for it.
deficit and self-love means that you were then looking externally to fulfill something. You were then looking externally to heal any wounds that you have, to like be the solution to something. And that's, I think, where all of our problems in this entire world, relationships, work, etc., that's where they are born, when you have a deficit in self-love. And you can
Yeah.
apply this formula to anything. So we're talking about relationships in this podcast. Okay, if I don't love myself, I'm going to seek a person outside of me to fill that void, that hole. Okay. I don't know, pick another random topic of work. Okay. Like, if I don't love myself, like I am gonna, I don't know, like do in something in the work arena, I'm gonna abuse it in some way. Maybe I'm gonna be a
Yeah, no, you were
workaholic.
just talking about it. You were like, if I'm not passionate about my job, then it's not worth having,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, exactly. So like maybe you're gonna like bypass some opportunities that would otherwise be good for you, whatever. So like this formula applies to anything in your life. And
Yeah.
basically, like what I'm trying to say is do not look externally to fix your problems. It all
Mhm.
starts inside, you know? And then
Yeah.
once you get to working on yourself and reflecting on yourself and dating yourself and finding out who you are, then that will naturally help you in your love life, in your relationships, because then you're going to like, you don't even have to try. That's the beautiful thing about working on self-love and self-discovery, is by that process you are naturally affecting all the other spokes in the wheel, including relationships. You are, without thinking about it, you're going to start looking at your relationships differently. Because
Right.
for me, I didn't think about it. I just like, this just happened to me because I worked on myself, you know. And it's kind of like blowing my mind now, like, wow, I didn't like ask to think this way. Now it just happened
Yeah.
because of like this work that I did on myself, and that's just the conclusion that I've come to with relationships,
Right. It's
you
like
know.
sort of like when you start a healthy habit, it's like, here's what one thing I can think of that's like a parallel. When I started, I didn't always have like a workout regimen, or like I didn't always go to the gym or work out in the morning, or like do yoga in the morning. But there was a period like almost a decade ago where I like just started, and it was the hardest thing. The first week or so of like starting a gym routine or like a yoga routine before I did anything else was so hard. I was like, oh, dragging my ass out of bed. But after the 2 week mark, it's like I just felt good. I was like, oh, like I was looking forward to like doing yoga in the morning. It like really set me up for my day. Like, and it was just this habit. It became a habit, a healthy habit. Like I didn't need to like, I don't know. I just felt like I needed that before I could do anything else and be creative and be productive. And then after that, like all these other things just started to happen naturally. Like I ate less shit. I ate
Mhm.
less like shitty foods. I didn't drink as much. I journaled more. Like all these things just sort of I
That
mean,
was your domino habit.
it was a domino. Yeah, it was a domino habit. That was where it started. And I feel
Mhm.
like it's like similar to what you're saying. It's like once you start working on this part, all these other things are just going to like start falling into place because you've set up this foundation. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
similar.
And something else that just struck me, and like, I don't know, maybe this is just like my mind going in spirals, is that like another problem that I see, especially like when I was younger, and I did this too, is like that like quest to find like the perfect guy and just like constantly like looking and looking and looking for a relationship. And then if I'm spending 24 hours a day looking for someone, then how much time am I spending with myself? You know what I mean? But then what I realized is that the moment, so like the two most significant relationships of my life were my ex of 5 years and my current relationship now with Mo. Both times that I met both people, I wasn't trying to look for anyone. Which to me, I'm just realizing that now, like, whoa, like when I met my ex, I was just like, was not interested in being in a relationship. I had just broken up with Jay. I was just like, I would need to work, make money. And I was focused on myself and driven with my goals. When I met Mo, I was in Morocco and I was just like, I want the experience of traveling, of being in a different culture. I want to give back. I want to teach. That was my goal. Both instances when I met like these partners of mine, I was working on myself. Lo and behold, the universe just presented these opportunities to me. And so that's what I'm saying. And again, you can apply this outside of relationships. When we are trying to force our own expectations and outcomes, like you're not going to get good stuff out of that. You know what I've learned, and like this, you can see this like from my life, is that like when I like stop, when I let my hand off the wheel and I let the universe drive, and I instead focused on what I could control, which was myself, the universe knows what you want, and the universe will grant you. Like I strongly believe this. The universe will give you what you need when the time is right. Because when I met both those people, I did jack shit to cause it. It just happened. The universe just did it for me. Because what was I doing? I was focused 100% on myself. You know?
Right. I agree, except for the jack shit part. I think when the universe sees that you're working on what you need to work on, which is yourself, then it's like, okay, now she's ready, you know?
Yeah. I guess like jack shit influence. Like I didn't like pull any strings or orchestrate
Right.
anything. Like,
Right.
it
Like
just
you were
happened.
just being with yourself and working on stuff with yourself. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like the universe is like, okay, I'm getting alignment energy from you. Like, here
Yeah,
you go.
exactly.
Yeah. I agree. Um, okay, so moving on. I'm not gonna read all of these, but I found like really interesting things to support our hypotheses, our informed hypotheses. So there's this, you might have heard of this guy. His name is Randall Munroe. He's a former NASA robot scientist, but you would probably better know him as this cartoonist on this humor site xkcd.com. If you look
Oh
it up,
yeah, yeah,
you'll
yeah.
know. Yeah. So it's worth reading his entire piece on the idea of soulmate, but I'll read this quote. So he said if we actually followed the soulmate idea, here's what he said: we would need to consider sexual orientation, we would need to consider gender, cultures, language, and that would leave us with an estimated 500 million potential matches, give or take, to weed through, he says. So if we were to spend 8 hours a day, 7 days a week playing what Randall calls soulmate roulette using an artificial intelligence platform, like if you created that captures all of our interactions with strangers, that system might be able to match everyone up with their soulmates. Oh, in a few decades, he says. A world of random soulmates would be a lonely one. So let's hope that's not what we live in.
I like that.
Yeah. And let's pick another one. Let's pick a good one here. Okay. And then there was this psychologist / author of this book called The Science of Happily Ever After. He's also a relationship expert, and he's argued that having or striving for a soulmate is an obstacle to a healthy and lasting relationship. He says, the problem with soulmates is that people tend to think that fate is responsible for producing them, he told the New York Observer. And then he explains that the reality is that enduring love is the byproduct of intentional, clear thought and action, as well as a healthy dose of persistence. So it goes back to your idea of choice. You can choose to work on an enduring relationship. Like if you find someone you really love or like, you can choose to like be intentional about that relationship. It's supposed to be like, okay, now I throw my hands up to fate. If this is my soulmate, it'll endure. Like, like that makes us so powerless in our own lives. It takes away our own agency. So I thought that was a really good quote. You have a thought? I can just see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I I agree with those, and I think that goes back to that movie you mentioned about like how she was like, dude, like I'm right here in front of you. Like the whole point of a relationship is to work through it and to like it's an adventure that we take together.
Yeah.
And again, like I've experienced that in my own life, and like with Mo, like we fight like all the time. Like and like people who meet us, they're like, oh my gosh, you're like so great together, like perfect chemistry, blah blah blah, and like and I think like when we look at the movies and like the misconception that people think with like perfect relationship is like the people like the two partners just never fight. It's just like effortless and like, oh, like no, like actually I find that this is one of the best. I mean, this is my current relationship, but it's like kind of my favorite one so far because we fight a lot, but we also grow a lot. Like I have seen tremendous growth from like the moment that we first met each other. And like we also like talk a lot about it, about just the ways that we've grown and what we've taught each other.
That's
So
good.
yes, like while we fight a lot, like we've also grown a lot from those fights, from those conflicts. We learn just like really valuable skills, not just in marriage, but just like any relationship, like working through it, listening to each other. We both have our own coping mechanisms and like we call each other out on it. You know, like for him, it's just like denying it or like being quiet. And I force him to communicate with me. And he's grown a lot in that. I know it's hard for him, but I'm working with him on it. So like the best relationships are the ones where there actually is conflict because hello, we're human, but like conflict that you choose to be partners in it together, you take the adventure together and you actively, like a muscle, work on it. And then the rewards are even greater. Like the rewards are so great, you
Do,
know?
do you find
Um,
that so now he communicates more with you?
yeah, he's like a lot better. I just know it's just a coping mechanism of his, and I know that he's working on it, and I see it. I compare a lot, like how he is now to how he was when I first met him, and he's grown a lot. And then me too. He's helped me in a lot of ways too, you know. So yeah, it's like
That's
I think it's
good. Yeah, no,
that's
I mean,
how a relationship should be.
that's good to hear that you're actually both carrying equal weight, and like as long as you feel that you're both carrying equal weight in this journey, like it's not just one person like helping the other person, I think
Mhm.
so it's important. And
Yeah.
that you're seeing growth. That's good. In yourself and in him.
Hmm.
Um Awesome. Okay. So as I hinted at earlier, like I guess one way to like sort of start changing this pattern within ourselves, because we can't change everyone, right? We can't change society. Like, is to change what that means for you, change what a soulmate means for you. And I found a couple of quotes from psychologists that I think touch on. I think you already started talking about it earlier. There's this one psychologist named Eli Finkel, and here's what he says. Many of us no longer require love, much less a soulmate, to fulfill our rudimentary needs. Partnership is now seen as a pathway toward perpetual self growth, which you were talking about. Not everyone will find the one, and they might be happier that way, living with higher levels of economic, social, and sexual freedom without a constraining or even toxic partnership, which may help to explain the decline in marriage over the last 2 decades. Those who do find a partner who fulfills their highest level needs hit the jackpot. The quote unquote all or nothing marriage means that those who cultivate a deep emotional and psychological bond with their partner will be likely to enjoy the most intimate form of human relationship. That's really interesting. Because like he's saying that not everyone feel like there's an increasing number of people who don't feel the need to have a partner like that. So the ones that actually do feel like, okay, I think I am ready to find someone who can go on this marriage journey with me are like more likely to feel fulfilled in that, because less people are like, I need to do it. um Although I don't know what he means by an all or nothing marriage. um I don't know what that means. I don't know if I like what that, but I need to read the whole article. But then there are these two other psychologists named Brooke Feeney and Nancy Collins that say they offer oh yeah, the psychologists offer an expanded picture of self-actualization as a balance between giving and receiving care and support. They maintain that caregiving and sacrifice, which for many people take place in long-term romantic relationships, are pathways to self-actualization. In their view, healthy forms of dependence are actually key to independence. So that sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but what I take it to mean is that um like you're saying, you were talking about codependence earlier and like how unhealthy that is, and they're saying the healthy form of that is that when you partner up, you're both actually helping each other be more independent, which I think what you were saying with Mo, and that you're helping each other grow to achieve like better forms of yourself in this partnership. I think that's what they're saying, and I find that interesting. It's like you can be dependent on each other, but to help each other grow, not to like
Yeah.
leech off of each other,
Yeah, that's a good clarification. Yeah, when I was talking about like toxic codependency earlier, I didn't mean like don't depend on each other at all. Then you're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
You're just like, yeah, like you are in a relationship, you are to some degree gonna quote unquote depend on each other. But yeah, like this nuance is important. And
I
that's
found that
why.
so interesting, and like
Yeah.
that's a healthy way to be dependent on each other.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you want to wrap it up with that quote that you were talking?
Um, yeah. So I want to do a little promo. I didn't mean she doesn't even know I exist, but one of my favorite YouTubers is Rowena Sai. She's just really awesome, and just check out her YouTube channel. She's just great. Like, anyway, I was watching one of her YouTube videos, and she was talking about being single actually, which is kind of wait, I guess kind of related, but we're talking about relationships. She was this video that she filmed is about her like talking about why she enjoys being single, but I think it's because like look, even if I'm in a relationship now, I'm in a marriage now, I still sometimes think in my head that I'm actually in a relationship with two people, myself and my husband. But I'm
Yeah.
still above my husband.
Right.
Like I'm number one. And because I put
Right.
myself number one, I'm able to be a better partner for my husband. So in a
Yeah.
way, it's like I still have that single mentality in my mind, even though I'm married, which I know is weird. And which is why I was watching that video. But
Mhm.
she said this quote. She said, and I'm just going to read it. The person that I've been waiting for my whole life, the person that I've been looking for, the quote unquote best friend that I've always wanted, the boyfriend that I've always wanted, the person that would take care of me, that is me. That is
Wow.
me. So she just like
Yeah.
listed all these things and it's like, oh, I have like the perfect this, perfect that. And like we spend our whole lives looking externally, when the entire time, right under our nose, it's you. Like
Yeah.
you are your own best friend, you are your own boyfriend, you are your own husband, your own wife, whatever. Like that's you. You don't need to
That's a
look
really
anywhere
good
for that.
point. Like if I wrote a list of like things I'm looking for in an ideal partner, I can probably fulfill all of those needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to like
It's just
look
a
at it.
really empowering, really comforting thought and reminder, especially in those moments when you do feel like you can only fill that need or whatever externally. A lot of the
Yeah.
times, like it's already inside you and you're already your own best friend. And it's really important for us to, again, like going back to self love, to be your own cheerleader, to be
Yeah.
your own like supporter, because a lot of the
Right.
times we're our own worst enemy. But I really like that quote and it resonated with me even though I was married already. I'm like, yeah, that's fucking
I like it a lot too. I like
awesome.
it a lot too. Actually, I'm gonna read Lizzo's. If
Yeah.
y'all know Lizzo's song called "Soulmate," here's a snippet. She says, "I'm my own soulmate. I know how to love me. I know that I'm always gonna hold me down." So you literally know all the intimate parts of yourself, and like you know where you need to grow, and you know where you're powerful, and like you know how you can support yourself. Like more intimately, more deeply than any other person, any other person. So I love that it works with your quote too. And then I take what she said about I'm always going to hold me down to mean I'm always going to, if anything happens externally, I can always anchor myself down. That's what I took it to mean. I love these quotes. I love that we talked about this today because like it just gives me um I don't know what this feeling is, but it's like I don't need to be like this feeling of like, oh God, I just need to like find someone, the satisfaction is my own choice. Like if I really like thought about like I'm actually happy, like I have everything I need and like it's making me feel really content right now, like
Mhm.
with myself.
Yeah,
So
that's the goal. Yeah, the
yeah.
other quick thing I will say before we close is that because you said like it's my choice that I'm thinking this way, so which means it's our choice to unravel that way of thinking, right? And I love like just all the stuff that we're talking about because that's what we're doing. We're unraveling these ways of thinking, these perspectives, and a lot of them because of like the societal bullshit that we have to like it just sucks that we
Yeah.
have to even unravel this in the first place. But I often remind myself that when we were born, when you were born, when I was born, we're like these little babies. We're perfect. When you're a little baby, you don't have these thoughts like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. Like, I'm not skinny
Yeah.
enough. I'm not like this, that. I need to find someone. When you're a baby, you just are. You just
Right.
are. You were loved. You were perfect. Like you were. But then when you grow up, And then you start learning these things and you start watching the shitty Disney movies and like all of then you start to like internalize all this stuff. And so now as adults, and this is just the pattern that I'm seeing with humans, right? As adults, we have to learn to unravel it and like in a way kind of like regress back to like
just like remember what it's like to be a child
and to just be when you're like
and
awesome
to like be like, yeah, I deserve just being. I deserve this affection being lavished upon me by myself and by all these other people, you know. Just going back to that.
And you're unapologetic when you're a baby. You're just like, yeah, dude.
Right. You don't like do something. You don't do something like this, and then you're like, oh no, what did I do? You know, like you just do it and then you move on.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just need to, I mean, obviously you can't do that everywhere. Like don't do it at work, but like, just like going back to that mindset and like kind of remembering that sensation is helpful. Okay. Yay. How do we close this? Meg?
Do we do what we're loving?
No, it's already,
okay.
we're like really, I mean, what we're loving is the movies and stuff that challenge this idea that we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Check them out. Okay, Meg, go into your closing spiel.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. Not that you had a choice because we're awesome. Yeah, we hope that you enjoyed that topic. I really I'm passionate about it. And if I was like a preacher with my own church, this is what I would preach every day. Self-love, cure for everything. It's not always easy. Yes, of course, there are days when you're just not in the mood for that, but it really is like the healing balm for everything. And yeah, you're already complete. If you're a relationship, great. If you're not, great. Like just be you and the universe will take care of you. Yeah, if you want to talk more about this, you can find us on our socials. So our Insta is at deepconvospodcast.
Wow.
I had to think like, wait. Yeah. And then our email is if you want to email us with some longer tidbits, it's deepconvospodcast@gmail.com. And then our personal Insta is I'm meg.sales.14. And then my sister doesn't have no dots. She's just Fran Sales. And we also got Facebook. And
we do. The same thing. Deep Convos Podcast.
Yeah. Oh, and also, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and announce it without running it by you. We are like thinking of having another logo, potentially replacing our logo. We're probably going to post up like a little something soon. So if you're like a graphic designer, artist.
If you want to jump ahead of us advertising it.
Yeah, but that is like something that's in the works. We are definitely like looking for someone to redesign.
Yeah.
Our logo.
Any graphic ideas you have like for maybe our YouTube or, you know, our extra bonus episodes or anything, just anything like putting on our Facebook profile or our Instagram page background, like, whatever.
Yeah, social media artworks.
Yeah. Anything, we're open.
Yeah. Okay. Wear your masks, people.
Wear your masks. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Go vote.
Yeah. Check your voter registration is
Check your voter registration. Vote early if you can. Mail it in if you can. It's important, people. Okay.
Okay. Have a great week.
Bye.
It's so awkward.